It's not very past and future, but a little bit. This one is the past and future of not human beings, but of a bridge. And it's true, there's a footpath past my house and over a river. And the original was built of concrete and iron. We had a bit of a flood a few years ago, and one half of the iron and concrete bridge is a field down the river, and there's a wooden one there now. But this is the poem for the old one, and it's called A Tale of Two Bridges. And it's the bridge speaking. Beautiful I never was, but I was built because of need, when men walked the tracks between the river's rocks and reeds, from farm to neighbour's farm. Of concrete and of iron I was built, to stand against the weather when the river rose and overspilt its banks to flood the fields, or snowdrifts hid me quite from view. But now men go by road on wheels, and in my place a fancy bridge, and new, gives passage to young folk with rucksacks on their backs, and plastic-covered maps, and shorts and nylon macks. Lost in the rain or sun or in the gathering dusk, they pause and turn the map around, to look for north or south and find their camping ground. Could I but speak, I'd tell them not only every turn of every track, but all the stories of 100 years of tears and triumphs. I look back and see so much: lovers' trysts beside the river, feuds and friendships, births and deaths, quarrels settled by discussion or by fists. I was here when they were not yet born. The poet leaned upon my iron rails, composing lines he'd leave behind, dying far from home in Flanders fields. I too have met my Armageddon. The great storm filled the river till it roared and tore and twisted in its course and boiled with rocks and lashed me with more force than even concrete could resist. My iron buckled and I broke, and now a shattered wreck I stand unnoticed and hold my secrets in my mossy cloak. There's two more. One is the poet in that. A lot of people won't have heard of him. His real name was Ellis Evans, but his bardic name was Heddwyn, and he was a Welsh poet who won the chair at the Eisteddfod in 1918, but he was killed in Flanders before he won it. You have to send the poems in before, and when it happens, they call out the name, the pseudonym of the person who's won, who then stands up, and the higher rank, two of the higher rank of poets in white clothes, or in the men in white sheets, as two old gentlemen described it to me when they were translating for me, go down and fetch him, and he comes up and he sits in a very special chair, which is then his thereafter, and there's a ceremony with a sword over it. And of course they called his name and nobody stood up. So eventually it filtered through, and they had the ceremony with a black cloth over the chair and nobody in it, and to this day it's called the Black Chair, and it's still there. It's in the farmhouse where he grew up, which is next door to me, it so happens. But when there's a point in the poem where you need to know that when the person has come up from the audience and is sitting in the chair, before the rest of the ceremony goes on, the bard with the sword says to the audience, "Is there peace?" And everybody shouts, "There is," which is a bit ironic in this case, but it's always done. It isn't normally, of course, conducted in a war. Excuse me one moment. Right. The hills of Wales are green and gold, but the men who once walked there now wade through trenches in the mud of foreign fields, where death stalks indiscriminate and cold. These are fields, but there will be no grain, no harvest here but bones and flesh, as the blood mingles with the rain. In Wales the yellow native poppy spangles hedgerows, unaware of how on Pilkin Ridge the evil thud of shells breaks the loveliness of Flanders poppies, red as blood, crimson petals falling in the mud, with broken dying men in awful pain, poppy petals mingling with their blood, and the blood mingling with the rain. Orders come from somewhere else. Men who hold no hate for fellow men are herded like uncomprehending flocks to keep a great grisly rendezvous with death, far from their native fields and fells. Poets plead their pity and their pain. The pen crawls on, and a slow silver vein of poetry seeps through Flanders mud and flows with the blood and with the rain. Quiet and cold, Ariane Rod shines silvering the slates of distant Wales, but her poet is a soldier now, gone with the men who marched away to a world of weary plodding boots, bayonets, and all that war entails. Half the youth of Europe slain in an incomprehensible war, where blood mingles, wasted with the rain. Far from the fear, the lice, the groans, men too old for war have read the words of those who face their Armageddon in those distant hellish zones. And is there peace? The bard intones, ceremonial sword raised above the black chair under the black cloth. The poet now is past his pain. Black crows fly over Flanders fields, and the blood mingles with the rain. Can I do one more, less miserable one? More cheerful. We were on the subject of language a while ago, so it's called Windows, but it's about languages. Every language is a window opening on another world, on another land. It's just a subtitle. When Russian falls upon my ear, or I read Cyrillic print, I see golden cupolas gleaming in a northern sky, and faithful babushkas holding to a faith they never left. I see the red flag flying still, holding to another faith, although it be in tatters and disgrace. And Russia's other face, I see a bear with snowy paws and Siberia in its soul. Hearing Le Français, I find the friends of Châtenay who opened there for me not just the window but the door into that society that with formal courtesy holds an arm's length still the old foe beyond the waves. I wanted to write Je trouve encore, for I cannot think of France in English words. Its essence is so French, and I must use les mots français to draw the curtains on the view. Now that I've transplanted my nomadic feet to where Cymru lives and breathes Cymraeg, I see at last through the window of where I tried in vain across the years to draw the curtains. Now I've learnt enough to hear the old language laughing through its tears, and glimpse what lies beyond the window's frame. May the old language live forever, with the people in their sing the people in their anthem. With them I sing yr hen iaith, and even for a borrowed land, I understand hiraeth. Hiraeth is longing, but you can't long for dinner or a beer or something with hiraeth. It has to be spiritual.